Hey guys, this is Yoda, and I've been playing a lot of VDH recently this week. And I've done pretty much all the dungeons, been messing around with a lot of builds, so this is just a quick update to show you guys where I'm at. And I get a lot of questions about stats and gear, so we'll go over that too. We'll go over that first, in fact. So first thing is stats. Number one priority, haste. You want like as much as you can get. 6.6 thousand roughly is where you start hitting 20% DR. So that's where I would like try to go for like as a minimum, but you want more than that if possible. Crit is your second best stat. You want to go all the way up to 10% DR, so that's 5,400. Some people go higher, but personally I wouldn't. You can go like up to 4K on gear and then use crit file too. That's perfectly viable. Next priority is verse. So crit is your best offensive stat. Verse is slightly better in my opinion defensively. Crit's better for parry, but against anything you can't parry, verse will be better. And like when you die, it's usually to something that you couldn't parry, or if you just straight up didn't parry, right? So in my opinion, verse is better defensively slightly. Also have mastery. Mastery is probably your worst stat. I wouldn't go above 1,000, but like the first few points are usually like okay, not that bad. So yeah, I have like these weird pants with a lot of mastery on them. I'm coping and saying they're fine, but I think ideally this setup is Galakron's pants here if you have 49s and then 49 tier helmet. But I don't have 49 Galakron pants, so I think the eye level's worth it for me. Anyway, those are stats. Then trinkets, you always want to play stone scales. The only exception is if you play last resort, but I never play last resort. So yeah, I always play stone scales. For second trinket, Rage Heart is the best tank trinket defensively. It's not as good for VDH as some other tanks because usually like once you're set up into a pull, you can kind of like just cover the self-healing by yourself without external help, even from trinkets or healer, whatever. But this trinket can negate magic debuffs like the Bloom from Dawn of the Infinite and Spiders in Black or Cold. And it's also nice as a buffer on pull. So I'd say it's still like probably the best defensive trinket, but it's not as good as it would be for like a Paladin or something. If you're not playing Rage Heart, so since it's not as good as it is for Paladin, I think DH has some other trinket options you can dip into, which are Signet Brand. This is the best single target trinket if you can keep uptime, like using Warren Doll or just, chaining fast in a dungeon. And Augury is the second best option for single target. If you don't have any of those and you also don't have a Rage Heart or don't want to use it, then you're kind of like dipping into the next tier of trinkets, which is Gift of Ursine or Ember or Pips. And below that, kind of just use whatever you have. So that's trinkets. Embellishments. So slimy boots. So not these boots, not the Toxic Thorn. The slimy boots plus Toxic Patch is your best single target. But slimy boots have really bad stats. They're high mastery, low verse, I think. And also, they reduce your haste, so they're really good for like raid parsing, but I wouldn't use them personally in Mythic Plus. Like you can, but I don't think they're that good. Personally, I prefer Toxic Thorn Foot Wraps and either Toxic Patch or Shadow Flame. So I don't use Toxic Patch right now because my gear is weird. Like I have these 49 socketed belt, and I always want to use Energy Bracers. So yeah, I'm just using Toxic Thorn plus Shadow Flame. Thorn, Shadow Flame, and Slimy Boots are like all fine. Lariat's also viable. But yeah, those are my embellishments. Those are my stats. Weapon, you want a 49 Thorn Collar Claw. Single target damage is very important, and this is the best weapon for that. If you don't care about single target, then you can just play double time or crafted weapon. Those are all fine too. All right, so that's stats and items. Next, we'll go over talents. So, like I said before, I never play Last Resort. In my opinion, it's better to be tanky and have one cheat than like be squishier and have two cheats. I have a few builds I think that are always tankier than Last Resort in all situations and should do more single target. The main gain from Last Resort is that you're like pretty tanky-ish on trash, and you also have high AoE damage, but you lose a lot of single target to play it, so that's why I never play it. And you're also squishier. Okay, so these are my builds. The first build I would call full damage. This is like full damage, but if you play like this, you'll have 0 spike talents. So you're gonna have a lot of downtime, which is like okay, like in lower keys. But once you get high enough, like even in a tall Desire, if you have nothing straight up, you might die. So I tend to play like this with 1 Feed the Demon talent. This basically has no calcified and, you know, only one of these and no extended spikes. So this is definitely like a damage-oriented build. I would only play this in a tall Desire on Fortified and some other situations on Tyrannical. Next we have the no Spirit Bomb. So I made a video about this build a while ago. This build is like pretty safe. You have at least one spike talent. You can play double if you want. And calcified spikes. This is tankier than my full damage build. But, you know, it doesn't have Spirit Bomb, so your uncapped AoE is going to be very low. Like, even compared to Last Resort, I think this on Sim, this was like 15% lower on 10 targets. But on single target, it's way higher, and it's definitely like tankier because you have frailty and spike talents. And it is also pretty good on prow damage, and you also have cycle binding. So this is no Spirit Bomb. I play this in dungeons without uncapped AoE, basically. I also rezone for this, and sometimes, like from Fall and Rise, the second half, usually you don't need uncapped AoE, so I rezone for this. Next, we have some more innovative builds. So this is dropping Cycle of Binding. If you drop Cycle of Binding, then Ascending Flame loses some value, so you can go Calcified. This build is like super tanky, and it has Spirit Bomb. So I would play this if you don't need Cycle to control the dungeon. So like the first part of Fall is a great example for that. There's not really spam casters that you need to control. Everything can be just like one melee kick and call it a day. So yeah, I find you don't need Cycle for that dungeon at the beginning. So I play this. Usually I'll rezone and put Cycle on just for some extra damage after the first part, since the second part is like kind of easy for tanks, especially VDH. But yeah, this is what I play at the beginning of Fall and some other situations. All right, next we have the most tanky build of this video, I guess, which is no brand spread. We dropped the fiery brand talents for basically all of the defensive and utility talents you could ever want. Like it even has Soulmonger. But you lose brand spread. So brand spread is like, it's really strong for on pull, like it makes you pretty tanky, but once it runs out, obviously it doesn't do anything. So this should give you super high uptime on like all of your defensive stuff. Like you have 2 spike talents that'll never fall off. You have Calcified, you have Soulmonger. So this is like the tankiest outside of cooldowns, which tends to be when you die, which is when you have no cooldowns. But it lacks burst AoE, and it lacks like the brand spread. So it's still tankier on bosses. This I think is the pretty good build for beginners. Since you have like no brand that you need to worry about for burst rotation, you can just do like your normal rotation the whole time. And also you have 100% spikes uptime, so you don't need to think about spikes. So if you're just starting out as VDH, you could try this. This is what I play, and also this is what I play in a few dungeons. A good example for this is Everbloom. I think you're going to be missing some Dread Pedal damage because you have no burst AoE. But that dungeon does challenge tanks quite a bit, and I think this build is very tanky for Everbloom, so I would try this. All right, so those are the 4 builds. If you have any questions or you want to tell me that my builds are stupid, you can feel free to stop by in Twitch chat, twitch.tv/YodaTV. Thanks for watching, and peace out.